welcome back to this week's Bourbon of the Week. Together on this channel, you and I are going to try and navigate this big and confusing world of bourbon. Like many of you, I myself am a bourbon novice, so I've taken what seems to be a complex formula, and I've broken it down into 3 simple categories: price, taste, drinkability. I rank my bourbons on a ranking sheet so you know what to buy and what to pass on. And that's really it. Bourbon made easy. So the question is, are you ready? This week we're doing something a little bit different. We're calling this Bourbon on a Budget. I have 3 bourbons here: Rebel Yell, Birddog, Ezra Brooks. All 3 of these bourbons coming in under $20. So we're going to take these 3 bourbons. We're going to see who the best one is between the 3 of them. And then we're going to rank that one on our ranking sheet. Let's get to it. So here we have it, Bourbon on a Budget. We got the Birddog, we got the Rebel Yell, we got the Ezra Brooks. Birddog and Rebel Yell are both an 80 proof bourbon, while Ezra Brooks is going to come in at a 90 proof. So we're going to keep that in mind when tasting these. But everybody knows before we get started, time for the traditional sip. Cheers. It's not too bad. So Birddog is actually famous for their flavored whiskeys. If you've ever seen Birddog, you might see a different shaped bottle than the one I've got here. This is actually in a different section. This is their bourbon. It's not a straight bourbon. It is an 80 proof. And there's not too much to complain about. $14.99. It's got all your typical bourbon flavors, but it doesn't have anything really extra than that. A little bit of a honey note, kind of on the earthier, grassier end of the taste spectrum, but not too bad. It has all your traditional flavors. Doesn't taste bad. No real kick. For 15 bucks, I wouldn't complain too much about this. Let's keep things moving along, though, and we'll go right over here to the Rebel Yell. This is a pretty good sound by the pop, by the way. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Another 80 proof here. Let's see what this one does. This one ran, let me see here. I knew I had my receipt somewhere. This one, the Rebel Yell, is $15.99. So Birddog, $14.99. Rebel Yell, $15.99. And then the Ezra Brooks on the end, only $11.49, which is interesting because that's the 90 proof compared to these other, which are only 80 proof. So let's see how this goes. Again, not too bad. This one is a little bit different. It is a little bit sweeter, but the sweetness almost tastes artificial. It doesn't taste like any type of fruity sweetness or anything like that. It almost tastes like an artificial sweetener, like a sugar packet or something. And I don't love this. Almost has a little bit of an after kick, and it definitely has an ethanol kick, and only being 80 proof, I don't love that. I'm assuming all of these are young bottles from the fact that they're only under $20. So I can't imagine they're aged too long. And I also don't know if you can tell, but they're very clear to see through. So they're not dark. You can tell they haven't sat in the barrel for too long. This almost has a little bit, I can't tell if it's a rye kick but it tastes like an ethanol kick, which I don't like for an 80 proof too much. But let's see what the Ezra Brooks does for us and see how they compare. So last but not least, we do have the Ezra Brooks Kentucky. Is this a straight? Yep, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey as well. This is a sour mash, and as everybody knows, I'm a big Jack Daniels fan, which is a sour mash as well. This is a 90 proof, so I expect a little bit more heat than the other 2. Birddog was smooth, no real kick to it. Rebel Yell had a little bit of a bite, so let's see what the Ezra Brooks does at a 90 proof. Cheers. Right off the bat, I can tell you this isn't the best tasting, at least for my preference on bourbon tastes. This has a very big oak taste to it. And then almost, we've talked about this flavor profile before of this leather taste. Definitely has that leather taste to it. Those are not my 2 favorite tastes when it comes to bourbon. I'm more of the sweeter, lighter side of things. So if you like that, I think you would like this one a little bit more than the other 2. But as for this being a 90 proof, there is a pretty good kick. Nothing crazy, nothing overwhelming. Kind of where you would expect it to be for a $12 bottle. I don't like it that much compared to the other 2. I think it's going to be a toss-up between the first 2 at the 80 proofs, between the Birddog and the Rebel Yell. This one just doesn't really do it for me. But again, for $11.49, you really can't complain too much, I guess. So that's going to bring it down to the Rebel Yell and the Birddog. I want to cleanse my palate, give these each one more sip here, and we're going to decide which one's going to be our winner for the contender and see where they rank on the ranking sheet. Birddog first. So right after I drank the water and then sipped the Birddog almost tastes more like a whiskey on the front end than it does a bourbon, which isn't a bad thing. I do love whiskeys. That's kind of how I got into the bourbon world. But it's interesting to think that if you add a little bit of water to this, now they are known for their flavored whiskeys, so I'm assuming that they use that same type of distilling process switch up the mash bill or something maybe a little bit to get into the bourbon world. But this flavor profile, it's right on point for any type of bourbon. You're talking vanilla, you're talking caramel. Like I mentioned before, a little bit of honey, but nothing crazy, nothing overwhelming on the palate. Let's get right into the Rebel Yell and see what this one does. They're very similar, to be honest with you. The Rebel Yell has a little bit more kick, if you ask me. Both 80 proof, and I don't like that ethanol kick. I don't think it does anything more for the flavor profile. So if you ask me, we're going to give it to the Birddog this week over the Rebel Yell, and definitely over the Ezra Brooks. Ezra Brooks, $12. If you need to buy a bottle of bourbon, go for it. Rebel Yell, a very close second, though, to the Birddog. These are actually very similar. A little bit darker, so maybe aged a little bit longer with the Rebel Yell. But that bite at the beginning and the flavor profile, it has a weird aftertaste that I really can't get by. So winner's going to be Birddog. Let's see where it ranks on the list. So congrats to Birddog. You're going to be our #1 contender on our budget bourbon of the week. It's a great bourbon. Rebel Yell put up a great fight. I think they're kind of neck and neck, but Birddog definitely squeaked by a little bit better on the taste profile. So let's get into this and see where it ranks on our ranking sheet. Cheers. So again, the drinkability on this is really good. There's no real burn to it, but you also wouldn't expect there to be with an 80 proof bourbon. It's very young, so it's not going to have a lot of extra rye flavors that come out of it or anything like that. It does taste like it does have a little bit of rye, peppery kind of burn to it, but no ethanol kick whatsoever. Let's give this a pretty good score. We're going to give this an 8.3 on drinkability. Getting a taste on this, and I want to be very clear when I say this, there is nothing wrong with the taste profile on this. It's your typical bourbon flavors. It's got your caramel, it's got your vanilla, it's got a little bit of a honey, a little bit of an oak, and then a little bit of, like I said, that rye kick, but nothing overwhelming. But that's the thing, is there is nothing overwhelming, and there's nothing that stands out, really. It's a little watered down. It's definitely short, as meaning like it doesn't last long. It's thin in the mouth. You're going to have sip after sip to keep tasting this. But for a $15 bottle, there's nothing that you can complain about when you're talking about these traditional bourbon flavors. It does a very good job at bringing them all together. It doesn't overwhelm one over the other, and it's going to give you exactly what you're looking for that bourbon profile. So as for taste on this, we're going to give this like a 6.5. I don't want to go too high because I don't think it deserves to be up there with some of the other bourbons that we've done, but I also don't want to go too low because I don't want you to think that it's a bad bourbon. It's definitely a good tasting bourbon. It's just nothing overwhelming. And that's going to bring us over into price. Like I mentioned, $14.99. This is a budget bourbon, but I wouldn't even consider it a bottom shelf bourbon. It's actually a pretty good bourbon for $14.99. I don't really think I've had a bourbon that's cheaper other than the ones that we just did, which were $15.99 and $11.49. So for $15, I don't want to complain too much, but again, you're kind of getting a $15 bottle. Nothing that stands out on the flavor profile. There is no ethanol kick, but at the same time, it's definitely a youthful bottle, which you can tell by the clear juice that you get out of it. So as for price, we're going to give this let's give it like a 7.9 on the price scale, which is actually going to break our average down to a 7.57, which coincidentally enough puts it right next to Old Grandad on our list, which is actually another budget bourbon. So it's kind of cool that these two fell right next to each other. Looks like Birddog smidges ahead by just a little bit, but these two are very similar. Both 80 proof, both Kentucky bourbons. 40% alcohol by volume, and I don't think that either one of them deserves to be any higher or lower on the list. That's what you're going to get for budget bourbons, kind of right in that range that we're talking, 7.5, 7.6. I think it's where they belong. Old Grandad is a great contender. Birddog just took over the budget bourbon world. Rebel Yell, I think, is right up here with the two of them, so that's what we're going to get. Birddog, 7.57. Thanks for stopping back out again this week. If you haven't already, put a comment in the comment section below. If you pick a bourbon that I haven't already tried and it ranks #1 on the list, I'll send you a little cash prize via your Venmo. So make sure you put a comment in the comment section below and let me know what bourbons I should be trying. And if you haven't already, click that like, click that subscribe. We're doing our next giveaway at 250 subscribers. I want to thank everybody that supported me this far. Please don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly. And as always, wash your hands. Pandemic ain't over, y'all. Cheers.